is that your carbon dioxide plus water in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll gives out carbohydrates plus the plant releases oxygen. Now, in this we will be studying about the synthesis of plant food other than carbohydrates. Now, they'll release the oxygen. But apart from making the food as carbohydrates, the plant also make it in the form of proteins or fats. Now, we have learned that plants synthesize carbohydrates through the process of photosynthesis. The carbohydrates are made of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen, that is carbon dioxide, water and hydrogen, right? These are used to synthesize other components of food such as proteins and fats. But proteins, see now these carbon dioxide and water are used to synthesize other components of foods like proteins and fats. Right. Now proteins are nitrogenous substances. We know that nitrogen is present in our atmosphere. Our air contains a lot of nitrogen, but the plants cannot intake the nitrogen from the air. Stomata only intake the carbon dioxide from the air. Then how the plant will get nitrogen for them in order to prepare the food? Now you might see that a lot of farmers use manure or fertilizers in the fields. Now these fertilizers contain nitrogen and they make the nitrate soil. Now soil becomes rich in nitrogen and the plants grow, and there is a lot of harvesting due to these fertilizers that you use. There is increase in the production just because of the nitrogen the fertilizers that are used. Right now, if I say you that how the nitrogen gets to the plants, see the nitrogen is present in the air. Whenever there is rainfall, the nitrogen gets mixed with the water and goes inside the soil. Now soil absorbs the nitrogen and it becomes fertile. Now the nitrogen present in the soil in the form of rain droplets get absorbed in the soil. After the nitrogen gets absorbed in the soil, the nitrogen is taken up by the roots to the different parts of the plant, and thus the requirement of nitrogen is fulfilled. Now plants cannot absorb nitrogen in this form. I have already told you. Soil has certain bacteria that convert gaseous nitrogen into a usable forms and release it into the soil. Now these soluble forms are absorbed by the plants along with water. You might have seen farmers adding fertilizer rich in nitrogen to the soil. In this way, the plant fulfill their requirements of nitrogen along with the other constituents. Plant can then synthesize components of food other than carbohydrates such as fats and protein if they have the nitrogen in the soil present. I hope you have understood this. Do download our Scholars Learning app and enjoy the learning experience with us.
Nitrogen synthesis. You know that plants make food in the presence of sunlight. They use water and carbon dioxide. The chlorophyll helps to convert it into glucose, which is the plant's food. Glucose is a carbohydrate. The process of making food like this is called photosynthesis. But living things also need nitrogen. Plants and animals cannot live without nitrogen. It's an important part of many cells. Proteins are made up of nitrogen. The chlorophyll in plants is also made of nitrogen. Where do we find nitrogen? In the air. Almost 3/4 of the air is made of nitrogen. But this nitrogen in the air cannot be used by animals and plants. The nitrogen has to be fixed so that it can be used by plants. This process of converting atmospheric nitrogen to something that the plants can take up is called nitrogen fixation. Once nitrogen is fixed, it can be absorbed and used by plants. As animals directly or indirectly depend on plants for their food, nitrogen enters their body too. Now, you must be wondering, how does this nitrogen from the air get fixed into the soil? There are special bacteria that can do this. The bacteria change nitrogen into a compound that the plants can absorb through the soil with their roots. This nitrogen then gets used to form different parts of the plant. This special bacteria lives in the root of some plants. When they can fix nitrogen in a way that the plant can absorb it, it's like a fertilizer for the plant. Plants that get the right amount of sunlight, fertilizer, and water grow to be nice and healthy. What did we just learn? Plants need nitrogen to make proteins and other body parts. Nitrogen is present in the air but cannot be used in that form. There are special bacteria that convert or fix the nitrogen in the air into a form that the roots can take up. Did you know? Nitrogen fixation also occurs naturally during lightning and rains, volcanic eruptions,
Friends, now let us know about those plants which do not have chlorophyll and cannot synthesize their food on their own. Just think about how do they survive and from where do they derive nutrients. As we have already learnt in this module that these plants derive food from other plants and animals, and this type of mode of nutrition is called heterotrophic mode of nutrition. The plants in which this kind of mode of nutrition is found are known as heterotrophs. There are 4 types of heterotrophic plants: parasitic plants, saprophytic plants, symbiotic plants, insectivorous plants. Now let's learn them one by one in detail. Let's start with parasitic plants. The plants which obtain their food directly from other plants are known as parasitic plants, and those plants from which they obtain food are known as host. You might have seen Kaskata, Amarbale, nearby you, which is an example of a parasitic plant. It coils around the stem and branches as a yellow tubular structure. You'll be surprised to know that it does not contain chlorophyll, so it takes ready-made food from the plant on which it is climbing. The plant on which it climbs is called a host. Is of insectivorous plants. There are a few plants which can trap insects and digest them and get nutrition. For example, pitcher plants. Actually, these plants can synthesize their own food by photosynthesis, but they grow in nitrogen-deficient soils, so such plants fulfill their nitrogen requirement by eating these small insects and hence are called insectivorous plants.
Heterotrophic nutrition. The classification of heterotrophic plants are shown. Plants called non-green plants are unable to manufacture their own food. Then, there are some plants which can manufacture their own food, but the soil in which they grow do not have all the nutrients. So how do these plants obtain their food or the other nutrients they need? Such plants depend on green plants or on other living bodies. This mode of nutrition is called heterotrophic nutrition, and such plants are called heterotrophs. Greek heteron is an, other, and troph, nutrition. Thus, heterotrophs are organisms that cannot manufacture their own food and have to depend on other plants or animals to obtain energy. Parasitic plants. Parasitic plants absorb food from another growing green plant called the host. Only the parasitic plant benefits from this relationship. Usually, parasitic plants develop special roots called hostoria which penetrate into the tissues of the host plant. The prepared food is generally absorbed from the root or the stem of the host plant. Coscuta, dodder, mistletoe, and apodanthus are common examples of parasitic plants. Parasitic plants do cause harm to the host plant. Dodder and mistletoe are serious problems for plants. Dodder can cover woody plants and cause heavy damage to certain economically important crop plants. Mistletoe can become so abundant on a tree that most of the foliage is of the parasite and not of the host. Scientists believe that parasitic plants rarely, perhaps never, kill the host plant so that the parasite can continue to live off the host. Carnivorous plants. Carnivorous plants are plants that derive some or most of its nutrients by trapping and consuming animals, mainly insects. Therefore, such plants are also called insectivorous plants. Some of the common ones are the pitcher plants, Dorsera, sundew, bladderwort, and the Venus flytrap. In the pitcher plant, the leaf is modified to form a tubular pitcher-like structure. The inside of the pitcher is lined with downward pointing hair. These hair do not allow any insect to climb back up and escape. The fluid at the bottom of the pitcher contains digestive juices which consume the insect. The California pitcher plant is also called the cobra lily as it resembles a rearing cobra. It has a forked leaf that resembles the forked tongue of a snake. Carnivorous plants. The leaves of sundew have tentacles with drops of a sticky substance called mucilage at the ends. Insects get stuck in this substance and become entangled. The mucilage then digests the helpless insect. The trap of the Venus flytrap is a highly modified leaf. On the inner surface, reddish hair to attract insects. There are short, stiff hair called trigger or sensitive hair. When anything touches these hair enough to bend them, the two lobes of the leaves snap shut in less than a second.